So hi, it's Andy Murdoch here from Remit Training. Today we are launching a new podcast along with the RHA, when we have the lovely Sally Gilson here to join us, and also Sue Pittock from Remit Training. So today we're going to cover everything HGV, the logistics sector, the haulage sector, training, and the future of the sector that we see coming forward with the future, and obviously future skills. Some of the shortage of skills that we're seeing just now. So it'll be interesting. So if I just introduce Sally.
Hi, I'm Sally Gilson. So I have been working in skills policy for the transport sector for about 14 years now. And although not much has changed, I'd say one of the biggest differences today is that I spend far more time talking about technicians than I do drivers at the moment. And I think that's why today is going to be very pertinent.
Yeah. And also Sue Pittock, CEO of Remit.
Hi everybody, I'm Sue Pittock, the CEO of Remit Training. I've worked in the education sector for circa 20 years. And at Remit we're extremely passionate about all things automotive training. So we're super proud to partner with the RHA to be their preferred training partner for apprenticeships in HGV, light vehicle van, whatever their membership requires, and then also all things adult technical training. So it's a great partnership because Remit specialises and does a lot of automotive training. So to partner with somebody like the RHA was a really proud moment for us, because it means we can help more of the automotive sector, particularly in this situation, the road haulage sector. So yeah, welcome to our podcast, and we're really looking forward to talking to you about all things skills and this landscape.
Yeah, thank you, Sue. Thank you, Sally. So I think to open the conversation, it's really, what is this conversation about? Where are we going? And I think a lot of it all stems from the skill shortage that we're seeing. We've been through a lot of years now where the focus has been on, HGV drivers and stuff, but ultimately behind the scenes, without the vehicles being on the road, we've got a bigger problem coming. So, Sally, just a little bit from you on, what are you hearing from your members, your customers about, that skills gap, and, what's your thoughts on the things that you're hearing from them?
Yeah, I think the skills shortages with regards to technicians has been a little bit more of a slow burn issue. Many reasons for that, but I think obviously we know how long it takes to train up to a fully qualified, and so I think that's sort of been becoming one of the issues. Over 10 years ago, there were over 100 sites where you could actually do an apprenticeship for heavy goods vehicle technician training. Now that's 37, 38, and that's across the whole of Great Britain. So I think that's feeding into our challenge. But back again about 15 years ago, we used to have one technician for every 25 heavy vehicles out on the road. Now it's one in about 32, so that's 19% fewer heavy vehicle technicians, and that's going to start to take a real effect. And certainly when I'm talking to our members, it's not just about that yearly MOT. The fact that they have to do maintenance checks every sort of 8 to 10 weeks, that's the areas where they're starting to get the delays, especially if they're a smaller operator who perhaps don't have the clout of the larger operators, and they're having to wait. So it's kind of irrelevant now whether there's a driver there. You need a technician there to make sure that stays out on the road.
Absolutely. And so that's a point that Sally mentions there about the number of colleges and training providers that can offer that HGV training, dropping from over 100, facilities, if you like, across the country to now, such as low as 30, 32. What your opinion is on that, and why that has now become such a prevalent issue in the country?
Yeah, so I've worked with Remit Training now for 13 years, and this landscape's changed tremendously from when I remember first coming in 13 years ago, and what the HGV sector looked like and the training infrastructure to what it looks like now. And I think we saw a big change during COVID. We saw lots of what we would call the FE training provider landscape. We saw a lot of people exit delivering training, particularly for HGV, for truck, bus, coach. So there's a much smaller, reduced network. What drives that? The facilities are not paid for by government currently. So the 5 training academies that we've got, and we also operate out of 2 client training academies, and the 5 that we've got, we pay for out of our own money, which makes it difficult, because then how does a training provider or a college get the money that you need to put the infrastructure in to get the proper quality to deliver something like HGV training? And because of the changes in technology, if you're a training provider that can't get the latest trucks and the rigs and all of the things that you need to provide state-of-the-art training for our country to keep the trucks on the road, then people aren't going to offer that training. So we saw a big exit from the market for providers not being, it wasn't necessarily that they didn't want to, it's that they couldn't afford to. We had a large infrastructure for training for this area. So for us, we've actually grown. And we're still really passionate that how do we try and make sure that although we can't endlessly open academies across the country without sort of either employer support or government support, so how do we make sure that we can try and make sure that the country's supported with the right training without falling into the trap of what I've just described with some of the other employers where providers, where you just can't afford to do that. And we've been fortunate enough to get really good support from employers. Without that support, we probably wouldn't have the infrastructure that we've got. So thank you to our employers. And then secondly, we're now starting to look at, with devolution and funding pots going out to different areas, we're being asked to go into other areas, and I won't share too much detail on the podcast, but an area in the south that has approached us and said, there's no provision, could you come and help us? And we said, absolutely, if you can help house us and then we can afford to do it. We would love to make sure that there's a quality training provision in all parts of the country. So I think over time, we'll try and do as many partnerships as we can, because it's not about whether we pay and own for the facilities. It's about whether we can have the right facilities with the right equipment, tooling and everything, and we can deliver the right service. For me, when you're helping somebody learn and upskill them and give them a knowledge, and they're working on something as what can be quite dangerous as a truck, if they don't get the right training, they can either kill themselves or they can kill other people in that process. So to make sure we're offering quality training is really important to us, and we love what we do in this space, but we wouldn't want to do it if we were compromising on anything to do with quality. So yes, we've seen a big change in the landscape since 2019 to now. And probably over the next 3 to 4 years, we'll hopefully see where we can expand and work with some of those devolved areas to put provision in there to make sure that it's still the greatest quality with the greatest equipment, and we can make sure that our country has the right level of training that they feel super excited to come into the HGV sector to do their training. And probably, Andy, I'll just touch on this quickly, that and when I say about coming into the HGV sector, if you go back to 2017, sort of pre-levy time, and what training would look like in this sector to what it looks like now. The big difference that we found is the diversity of people coming into the HGV sector. So I remember even 3 years ago walking into one of our academies, and I saw the first HGV group of apprentices where 50% of the group were female. You wouldn't have seen that 13 years ago when I first come into this area. And then literally a couple of weeks ago, I went along with a client to their graduation event, and these apprentices were graduating, and it was a super proud moment to see so many females graduating with a really bright future in the haulage sector, working with trucks. It's just phenomenal. So there's a big change in what's going on inside the transport sector versus what it used to be 13 years ago, and it's really pleasing to see.
I think that is really amazing, because we know that our sector has a real diversity issue, and trying to attract females to these roles has been a struggle. I'm going to show my age now, and whenever I talk to a young person, they look at me completely blankly, and I said, oh, we need to use that image of Charlene and Neighbours. And you realise then, actually, you're talking about something that happened over 30 years ago. Well, that's why they're looking at you blankly. But we can take these new recruits and use them then in our own marketing, just to sort of highlight that actually this is an occupation that is for everybody, and it's a real opportunity. So I share your feeling with seeing that many young girls on the programme.
And it's probably a real pertinent time just to mention something else that we're trying to support in the automotive sector. So we've recently partnered with a company called Your Future. We helped work with them for about 18 months to build, and this will make you smile, to build. It currently sits on TikTok. It can sit on different places, but it's a careers advice app for young people. And I mentioned earlier, I've been in this industry for a number of years now. And if you look back over the years, we've had things like job centres, connections, careers hubs. Do I think any of them have truly worked for our young people? No, I don't. Do I think they get the right advice around apprenticeships particularly? No, I don't. And that's not necessarily the responsibility of the schools. I don't think the schools necessarily understand apprenticeships in the way that they need to give.
For them to know about every single job that's out there.
Yeah, especially when there's so many apprenticeships as there are. But knowing now that the uptake is increasing on apprenticeships, degrees are getting more expensive this year. So we've seen over the last couple of years, as degrees are getting more expensive, and there's more and more apprenticeship opportunities where somebody can start an apprenticeship. It might be a 3-year apprenticeship, a 4-year apprenticeship. Some are obviously shorter, some are longer, but you can get a really credible career by doing an apprenticeship. So you're earning while you're learning. You're not building up any debt that at the end of that degree, you're then going out into the job market. So on an apprenticeship, we all know that it can be an amazing career option in certain career paths. Automotive, it's probably one of those that's a man and boy thing, that you go to somebody, if you're a technician, did you do an apprenticeship? And nearly everybody says yes. And apprenticeships in this industry have been around a long, long time. So people that are now working in the senior teams of lots of the businesses in the automotive sector will go, yeah, I did my apprenticeship back in the day. So I think everyone really understands apprenticeships in this sector. I think they are evolving because of the changes in technology and what we want to do. But if I just talk briefly about what I mentioned earlier about the Your Future Careers Advice app. So why were we keen to partner with these guys to help them build the app to give the advice to young people, is because the majority of people have got a phone. The phone goes everywhere, so you can get this careers advice sat in your chair at home. So over the years, I think the whole FE sector has struggled to how do you get out and try and engage with schools and parents. And then suddenly we could see that through Your Future, The young people on the TikTok app could then show that to their parents. And the really nice thing about it, because on the app you fill in a number of questions, it then tells you which sectors that you're really aligned to. So we get people coming out that are going to be aligned to the automotive sector. That helps us understand, because we have over 20,000 people apply. So it's not that we need candidates, it's that we need a good way of screening candidates to get people that are really going to align with the jobs that there are in this sector. And then the second part the app does is allowed us to build in some custom questions that helps us screen a little bit further without having to pick up the phone to talk to everyone. And then the third element is they'll do a mechanical reasoning test, so we can score people from highest to lowest with a threshold. So then you can get through the candidates using technology to then see which candidates are going to be really, really good. And we're due to place, we've already got hundreds of candidates lined up to go into apprenticeship roles across the next 3 months. But we've also got, and this is what's, it's quite sad in a way, and this is why we really want to help promote this across the country, is we've got 500 screened suitable candidates that 400 of those want to go into the HGV sector, and 100 would happily do van or light. And we have other candidates that we haven't screened yet because we haven't got enough placements. But if we're able to partner with your membership/customers and promote this more and give more opportunities in the country for people to come into the sector, that would be a fantastic thing that we would all feel really proud of.
I think that's crucial for our H8 members to know as well, because one thing I'm forever hearing is that young people don't want to do this, and I don't believe that's the case. And you've just highlighted that actually there is the appetite to do this kind of training and seek jobs in the technician area. So yeah, I mean, it's exactly what our membership need, that link to the young people.
To show you how powerful this is, we did a pilot, and I won't name the client on the podcast, but we did 9 videos with a client a few months ago. And the beauty of this platform is it's young people giving careers advice to young people. So what they don't want is somebody older than them giving them careers advice. They just don't want that. So this is very carefully designed by the team in Your Future, that there's loads of short videos in there. So it might show somebody that started an apprenticeship, finished an apprenticeship, working inside a business, etc. But for those 9 videos, there was 1.6 million views on TikTok from 9 videos. How could you ever get that traction by trying to go around the schools? Yeah. You just can't achieve. So I think this will be an absolute game changer. So as I say, we haven't done this to generate candidates. We've got loads of candidates. Our plea to the sector right now is if people could give one person an opportunity, and this sector is quite large, if everybody gave one person an opportunity, we would help fix the skill shortage and the technician gap that we all know that exists. And we would make lots of people really happy that want to come in this sector. And it is HGV, they want to come into the sector. They know they can earn more in the HGV sector than some other sectors. So it is a really good career. And when people have finished their apprenticeship and they might go on and be a master tech, I mentioned earlier that lots of people in the senior teams in these businesses started as an apprentice. So it gives you a really good career path that you could end up in. Management roles, running companies, loads of our customers that we work with, they started as an apprentice and they might be the CEO of that business now or the MD. So it is a fantastic opportunity. So yeah, hopefully everybody can understand that we don't have a shortage of people being interested to come into the industry. We really don't. We do need people to look after people once they've come into the industry and they're on a programme, but we definitely don't have a shortage.
That goes back to the fact that all of those people who we talked to who started off as an apprentice, they just need to switch back to how they felt when they first arrived in the workshop, and just remember that actually you do need to nurture that talent and put in the time and effort.
And I think as a country, you know, if we go back 30 years, I'm giving my age away now as well, Sally, thanks for that. You know, when I was an apprentice, the country, from what I can remember, you know, we were geared up. Apprentices were a way forward. You know, not everybody went into, you know, university courses and stuff. So, looking at now, do we have that same, you know, hunger for apprenticeships? And I know government always push out about we will have 3 million apprentices, you know, by this point. But there seems to be, you know, and we know, you know, with the positions that we're in, working with clients, that there is still a huge gap. There's a number of reasons for that obviously, Sally, we've spoke about over the last probably 18 months. You know, you've got the ageing workforce. We've got probably the bit of the scared technicians who don't want to work on EV, they don't want to work on this new technology, so they're deciding to exit out of the trade. But it's how, as a sector, are you feeling it from your side, from your clients about, you know, is it just ageing workforce? Is it having mentors enough in the workplace? So for me, it's about, you know, within our business, it's trying to educate employers, and not just the main manufacturers. Main manufacturers tend to really look after what they're doing. It's probably outside of that, so some of the kind of small levy of clients, your SME clients, you know, they have to grow their own talent. It's not going to be handed to them. So it's how do we, you know, encourage that from your point of view? Is there something that you think would help? Is it, you know, is there any myths that we need to bust today?
Oh, there's loads of myths that we need to bust today. But I think one of the issues that you have is that because we've got so many skills shortages at the moment, it's making everybody incredibly busy. Yeah. And it's that, I think, that scary thought that you've got a new person that's going to be coming in who needs all this time and attention when you can't deal with the workload that you've got. But without bringing in that new person, you're never going to solve that skill shortage problem. So I think what we just need to do a bit of explainer of that, yes, obviously you need to do the hand holding in the workshop. You have to train these people. Think back to when you learnt. Yeah. But you're not doing the lion's share of the training. That's what a quality training partner provides. That's why if you sort of invest your time in Remit, then you're getting that partnership. And you are not completely on your own. And I think that there's a lot of misunderstandings when it comes to apprenticeships. But you are given that guidance from word go. Yes, you need to make sure that there is someone in the business who's going to act as the mentor. But I'd say that the whole business has to be signed up to the apprenticeships. The whole business has got to be focused on training people. But because if we don't train new people, then we are going to die as a sector.
Well, I think, and I know that the network will absolutely be aware of this, but what we've seen over the last 5 to probably 8, maybe 5-8 years, is that the technicians now are just doing that, you know, round the dealerships, extra 50 pence. But what we've done is we've just driven the cost. Yeah, exactly the same with the drivers. So we drive the cost up of employing, you know, technicians. I know in the past we've had clients who we spoke to a number of years ago and committed to the apprenticeship programme and said, I'm going to grow my own, because actually trying to recruit them, you've got recruitment fees, X, Y, Z. It's a costly business. So this client, and I won't mention the podcast, but I know they'll know who they are, they now don't use recruitment. They've grown their own. So their recruitment comes within through their apprenticeship programmes. And yet it's a bit of investment at the start. However, they know the people because they have trained them. So coming through that, I think, is going to be vital.
And I think if you give a young person their break and invest in them, they
all need it.
But also that young person will appreciate it. They're not all going to stay. You know, they're young. They're going to want to move on to other things potentially. Yeah. But apprentices are very loyal members of staff. And I think that's what you're sort of investing in as well.
I think what we see as well, if you take a HGV apprenticeship program, it's a 3-year program, and the employer might go, oh, that's a really long time. But they can start generating revenue for you in, you know, roughly about 6 months. So you've got that little bit of an investment at the start. not all employers know that you don't have to pay the employer's national insurance for an apprentice.
That's
we
a big
all
for
know
the
this
under
year
25s.
that's been
That's why you invest in a young person.
yeah. So anyone under 25 that's earning less than 50,200, I think it is, you don't have to pay employers NI. So that's a saving. Some of our clients use that saving if they travel to come to one of our locations in Derby. They'll use that to offset some of the hotel costs to make sure that they can get a great experience and get all of the right training, so that they then don't have to spend ages doing training, because it's quite rigorous, the training over this 3-year period. And then they can start being revenue generating on certain tasks that they're signed off for. But the great thing with that then is, instead of employers turning away revenue or having complaints off of customers because they can't turn around the jobs that are coming into the workshop, if they've invested in that talent, they can then get more revenue coming in, they can build their business. And we understand that there are some challenges inside businesses because they have to make the extra cost for that 6 months work. But we met a client recently that they've put a really good model together to go, right, okay, you put a bit of investment in 6 months, we give them the support that they need, but they're actually supporting our business and they're the future talent of our business. They plug that gap for the labour workforce model. So when businesses are looking, what do I need for the next 2, 3, 4 years, apprenticeships can add a really good solution to that. But also what we found, particularly in the automotive sector, is there's a lot of what we call it adult technical training. So it may be people saying, well, okay, because there's a skill shortage in heavy and I need somebody that can do some of these skills faster than what an apprentice may be able to. So we offer a light to heavy conversion course. And we can work with businesses to give them some training needs analysis, some consultancy type work to say, right, tell us about your business. We can give you some recommendations on the relevant courses. And there's courses that are either off the shelf accredited courses, or some of our clients will come along and say, can I have that, and can I have that accredited, and can I have something really bespoke to me? And we do that as well.
And the bonus then is you're not getting a completely green person either, so they will be able to hit the ground running. And that's a great idea.
So I think both things, if you're looking at a future labour model to go, my business needs a resource, I don't want the complaints, I want to be able to take the jobs through the workshop and keep my customers happy. There's probably initially a blend on the two things, and then eventually, the example Andy gave earlier, where that business invested over 3 years and took an intake each year. And then when we met them, it was fantastic because they said, look, we've got the right behaviours, we've got the right skills and knowledge, they fit into the culture. We literally don't have to recruit externally anymore. And you go, oh my God, this works. This really does make a difference. So yeah, a bit of a blend possibly initially.
I think one of the other issues that our members have, because there is such a talent shortage at the moment, is that they have got fully qualified technicians who have been working in the sector for years and years and years, doing trailer inspections. And what they really need is that newbie who can be qualified quickly to get to do the trailer inspections, that then the qualified technicians are actually working on the things that they should be working on. Yeah. Is this an area as well that you can help our membership?
Yes, so we've recently introduced, with our partnership with RHA, we've introduced a trailer course.
It's almost like a TG Works.
Yeah, we've introduced that as a course. That wasn't something that we particularly had demand, or we didn't see it as demand until we started talking to you guys and saying, what do your members/customers want? And then that was one of the things. And we said, that's fine, we can add that to the list of courses. There's also, I know, the Trailblazer group that Karen heads up. They've been working now for quite a while to get a level 2 apprenticeship in HGV. And why would we go back to a level 2? Because in the old framework days, you had a level 2 and then a level 3. And then since 2017, we've only had the level 3. And the reason the employer group wanted a level 2 is really what you're saying, Sally, that you might have, and I'll just make a percentage up, you might have 60 to 80% of your workforce that are going to do inspections, they're going to do the basic jobs. Not everyone wants to go on to do the diagnostics and the electrics. So the level 2 is a shorter program. It will be a 2-year program, hopefully, when it's signed off. And then that gives the apprentice the opportunity to get through their apprenticeship and add value to businesses for things that are really relevant. And then those that finish the level 2, we will always talk to them about, do they want to go on and do the last part of the level 3 so that they can still be fully qualified for that area. But for those that don't, that they only ever want to get to that point, it means we won't see them drop off with nothing to show for the 2 years they've put in. So we think that's a really good thing, because who wants to see somebody that's worked really hard on an apprenticeship because they can't get through some of the more challenging aspects, that they leave with nothing. So we think this will really support the economy and the automotive sector, and it does the right thing by the apprentices as well. So it's a win-win.
Perfect.
Good, thanks for that, Sally. So I think one of the next things, I think we touched briefly earlier on, is the future skills. So we know where we are today, we know there is a bit of a gap. The next probably 5 years, up to the year 2030, where we know that the net zero transition is huge. We know as a country we've got an infrastructure issue, but again in that conversation there is that issue of technicians, the technology that they have to be able to work on, with obviously the EV, different alternative fuels coming in. Is there an opinion in the RHA's network around, as I say, and I know we've been out, we speak to a lot of customers, as you can imagine, on a kind of monthly basis, and I know in the light vehicle side of the sector, a lot are saying, we just they're not interested in this EV that's coming, but unfortunately it's coming. I don't think there's a way to hide away from it, but they come back to that age, the generation of, like myself, I like petrol, I like diesel, the EV, not so much scares me,
It doesn't
like
excite
ice.
you. Yeah.
So it doesn't excite me the same. So and a lot of these employers and owners of garages feel exactly the same. It's like, but the technology's here, it's coming at us thick and fast. That age gap that we've seen retiring out of the sector, we have to bring new technicians in, but we don't have an option regardless of anything. But the technicians and apprentices that we'll bring in will have to, at this time, deal with both. So you'll have ICE, you'll have EV, you'll have hydrogen, you'll have alternative fuels. So when I came in as a mechanic apprentice when I was 16, it was pretty easy-ish. It was the old diesel engines, it was the petrol engines. And the learners coming in now, the technology they're having to work with is just a way past what I could ever have imagined at 16. So is there a kind of a theme that you're starting to see within your customers and members? Or?
Yeah, I think the change in technology is scary for some. They love the vehicles they're working on. That's why they took the role. They love the ICE engines. But we've seen so many changes over the past sort of 10, 15 years. And a lot of the diagnostics obviously has been changing. You've rather than sort of trying to find the fault, you actually now have the equipment to do that for you. So there's been this gradual transition. Now, obviously, an EV truck is going to be completely different. But there are still fundamental things that you still need to fix on it. Those inspections will still continue. It's just going to be different. Do we like change? No one overly likes change, but we're going to see this point. So at the moment, I think it's about 0.5% of trucks on the road are EV. So it's a very small number. And I think that's a little bit of the problem, that nobody's actually seen the trucks. So when they talk about that they don't like them, they don't want to work on them, they've probably not actually seen one. They've not touched it, felt it, and driven it. And I think some probably will still hate it after that point, but you will also get some people go, oh, okay, it's not as scary as I thought it was, and I can do this. Yes, there's going to be retraining available, it's going to be needed. And I think this is another area, especially for the road transport sector, we've got a little bit out of the habit of training people. And we need to do that ongoing training. It's going to be one of the key things actually of keeping young people engaged. They're going to need keep on training, but also we know the tech is going to change significantly, not just over the next 10 years, but the next 10, 20, 30. You think about your phone and how that's changed in 20 years. Tech changes really quickly. We're going to need to keep retraining the young people as well. So we're going to need those courses that are going to be dynamic enough to be able to keep everybody skilled. And the workforce that's out there at the moment obviously is massive. We desperately need to retain them for all the reasons that we've just said. So somehow we need to get their excitement about what's coming. And it might be that actually there's hydrogen. I'm fairly agnostic on what's going to happen in terms of the actual vehicle. I pretty much up to the 24-ton, you probably are looking at EV. The question mark over that, maybe, don't know. Don't want to get controversial and have a conversation about that. But there's going to be lots of different technology, and we know that so when we hit about 2030, that's going to be the big change. 2035 obviously is the truck date. So it's going to be this real build-up. We're starting to see quite a number of our members investing in this technology now. So those people obviously are going to need to be trained. And I think we were discussing earlier, it's not just your main technician that's going to need to train. Everybody needs to be aware of how these vehicles work. So there are a lot of training opportunities there, and it's good to keep up to date. It's good to challenge yourself with new information.
And I think, again, being very privileged, I get to go into some of the training facilities of our clients that we work with, and the trucks are just fantastic. The EVs, and I hate to say it, but they're the way forward, and they're coming, they're here. But some of the technology on them, and I get excited again because it's something new, and so it is great to go in and see. To touch on some of the training stuff, you're absolutely right. A lot of the haulage businesses, delivery companies, a lot of them are shifting to the EV vans, the lighter vehicles. You need to train. Unfortunately, if you drive out one of these cars, or you take it to get washed, or you charge it up, you kind of need to be aware of some of the risks and dangers that are there with EVs. So, we deliver the level 1 course. It's just an awareness course, but everybody. And I'm quite surprised, actually, that insurance companies haven't jumped on this to say, if you have got an EV fleet of any type, make sure everybody that can come into contact with that vehicle, I think so. They must have some levels. So again, it's something that we deliver as that level 1. But then you go up through the different, recovery vehicles, the EVs, into the technicians, into the workshops, the police force, ambulance, fire brigade. They attend vehicle accidents that are EV. Do they understand the risk? So there's loads of different things that don't just think technicians. There's a whole host of people out there in the country that need to be kept safe, because they can be dangerous as well, especially if they've been in a road traffic accident. So, but no, that's great. Some of the other stuff I think goes back to, if we take it back a little bit, that planning, for that 3-year period. And so obviously you've been involved in training for a long time, as have I. What would be your advice to some of the these employers that are kind of say scared of, but they feel as if apprentices, I know we feel sometimes they're a bit standoffish, or apprentices are probably a bit more hassle than they're worth, if you like. We've heard that over the years, but for me it's just, you may think that initially, but I could go back to bust that myth. Apprentices are so vital to the country. It's not just about an individual business. They're vital to the country, that we get apprentices onto the apprenticeship programs, so that we don't have this gap.
I think there's some reasons for that though, Andy, when you talk to employers, particularly the smaller, medium, bottom end of the large employer. Why do they sometimes say, oh no, I've had a bad experience with an apprentice? Because the provider within the FE environment may have said to them, right, I've got a candidate for you, take that one. So then they think, oh, okay, I'll take that one. And then the candidate didn't really fit with their business. They weren't really, they didn't go through the rigor of checking all the things I mentioned earlier for your future, where you answer a ton of questions that are going to check that you're aligned with that sector. They're going to check that you've got an aptitude to work in this sector. And also, people work with people. So what we do to make sure that we can overcome some of those negative experience of apprenticeships is we'll give people a selection of candidates that they can choose from. We never tell anyone to take anyone. So we would say, here's a range of people that we think fit into the specification you've given us. Can you do the final interview and say if you want to hire or not? And then sometimes we'll say, okay, great. We'll send the person in to do a trial. So then again, they get some immersion inside the business. Are they going to like the environment they're in, the people they're in? Do they think that they can cope with what goes on in a workshop environment? Now, fortunately, banter has dropped a lot from when I come into this industry many years ago, and people are treated in a much better way now. So I think making sure that the person that is taking somebody on is in control of that decision, and they get somebody that really aligns with their business. And then we partner with people to make sure that it doesn't become burdensome for admin, or, you know, how does the funding work? And we were talking about this earlier, that the majority of people, they're not paying for the training. The training will come through the growth and skills levy, and then there's a small amount where they may have to pay a small top up, and in reality some of our bigger employers would probably help out with a levy transfer if somebody didn't have that small amount. So if that was the case, by all means reach out and ask. And then in our training we do two things. So we did a ton of research about 18 months ago on what makes successful education. And how do we get it to work with an employer and the training provider. And from the research that we done, the evidence told us that, yeah, you'll have a technical trainer, but you also align an emotional support coach. And when I first heard this, I was like, emotional support coach? But actually, we've got a team of people that we didn't realise were actually doing this, because we do residential blocks, so we need to make sure that people that are coming on a residential block are going to be safe when they're with us. So what the emotional support coach does is looks after all of their mental health, their well-being in the workplace. So we bridge the gap between the training that takes place in one of these sort of training academies that we've got, that we're sat in today, versus the workplace. So one of our team will literally liaise with the mentor or the line manager to make sure that culturally it's working inside the business, and we get those two things to balance. So that helps create a better experience, but that's not something that's currently funded through an apprenticeship program. So again, it's a bit like the academies that we pay for. We pay for these emotional support coaches. And why do we do that? Because we think it's super important. For most apprentices on an automotive apprenticeship are like 16 to 24-year-olds. There are some older ones, but in the main 16 to 24. So we want to make sure they have a great experience. We also, the other part of the research that come out of this country that was number one against 73 other countries for their scores in English, maths and science was how do we make the learning fun? So in this type of industry, we find from talking to our apprentices that they don't particularly want to learn in big textbooks or virtually online. There's other programs we deliver, our leadership and management programs, our digital programs, our marketing programs. They all have a place for online, and they work brilliantly online to do lots of those programs. But if you take something like this, and we know this through COVID when we had to deliver online, the young people are saying, look, I want to learn with my hands. That's why I come into this industry. I understand I've got to do a certain amount of theory to have the knowledge, but please let me come and play with the trucks, the buses, the coaches. Please let me get hands-on. So if you create more of that, you create more of what I call a raving fan, where the apprentices get excited to come into the training academy for their blocks, because they know they're going to be working on the latest equipment, and they can get access to stuff that possibly in the workplace you might not be able to practice on a customer vehicle. Whereas the brilliant thing about this type of environment is it's a safe place to practice, to break something, and that's okay if you break it. We're not going to deliberately let people break things, but when you're training, inevitably you're not qualified, so you are going to have to learn. So that was part of what makes an apprenticeship a little bit different. So you've got the emotional support coach, you've got making the learning fun. The other thing they did is sometimes you can bake the hours and get a bit fixated with guided learning hours, and this other research said, look, there's a balance. If you make it fun and the student wants to do really well, and in this case the apprentice, then they're going to put more effort into something, whereas some other countries, which I won't name on a podcast, but some other countries might do, I don't know, if you were learning how to do the violin, they might want you to do it for 6.5 days, till in the end you just don't like the subject matter. So the passion is just drained out of it because you just don't get any balance to what you're doing. And then the other thing we do with our programs is we put a blend in where, for the employer to make it easy or easier, we'll give them the workplace tasks, so it's all defined, so they know when somebody's coming in for a residential block, they'll do their pre-learning up front, that is online. Then they'll come in and do their block. At the end of that, they do a end of block exam, so we can check they've retained all of that information. And then they have a list of jobs that they'll do in the workplace with a mentor to make sure that they can then apply those skills. So then the employer can see, oh, okay, yeah, they've been away, they've learnt that. I can now see that they've got the ability to do that. I've given them some of those jobs under supervision. And then you see that they can do more and more inside the workplace. So it's well structured, well thought through on the balance of that. And then what we also do is we do net promoter scores. So at the end of each residential block, the apprentices fill in a survey, and people will say to me, oh yeah, but the apprentices will just like say what you want to hear. Apprentices do not do that. Apprentices genuinely want to make sure that if they're giving up their time, they want to get the best experience. So they'll net promoter score our tutors, the classroom session, the workshop session, our curriculum. And then every week we review every piece of that feedback from the net promoter scores. So we're continually improving. How do we get it to be the best it can be, to make sure the employers don't feel like they're having to do the training, that we cover the training. We give the employers the right support. We offer mentor training so they know how to support an apprentice in the workplace, and we structure it so it's as simple as possible for an employer. Yes, it's slightly different than the old framework days where you might have been signing off assessments in the workplace and there's a little bit of technology. It is relatively simple, and our teams can help the employer understand that. So there's this whole partnership, and then we've got what we call development coaches that go out into the employer's place of work and then have the conversation about how's the learner getting on, how are they in the workplace, this is how it's going when they come to the training academy. So that whole circle of small little things that all adds up to turn it into something that can be a fantastic experience for someone on an apprenticeship program. That doesn't come easy. That's years of sort of research, learning, changing, evolving. But then hopefully now we get to the point where it's a great experience for people.
Plenty of hand holding for our members.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's not too traumatic for them, but also not quite so daunting for the apprentice as well, because they've got that emotional support there as well, because it's daunting a first day at work, isn't it?
It is, and particularly where we're doing residential blocks. So people come from all over. We've got an academy in Motherwell, so Scotland goes to Motherwell, but England and Wales, they'll come to Derby. We're probably the biggest user of the hotels in Derby because we've got hundreds of apprentices per week. But that's why
probably the first time that they're staying away from home
absolutely,
as well.
Yeah, and it's so exciting for them as well to like travel for the first time, and so then our job is to look after them while they're in the hotel. So the team that we have, the emotional support coaches, if a learner said, "Oh, I don't feel very well in the evening," that team just drop everything and they'll go to them wherever they are. So our people are what makes this experience really special, because you can't bottle that really. You get that by having the volume in the provision and having enough people around that if an apprentice needs support, they might be an hour away from home. They need somebody that might need to, sort their needs in the evening there and then. So we have a team that do that. So yeah, all around the overall package is, in my view, our job is to give the employers is to make it as simple as possible, give them as much knowledge as possible for how they can help the apprentice without overcomplicating that, and then give them all the advice and guidance for how do we get them through the rigour of an endpoint assessment. And we've got some phenomenal success this year in endpoint, so we know that what we've learnt from the year before to this year is improving all the
I'm
time.
very conscious that anybody who's not currently involved in an apprenticeship won't even know what an endpoint assessment is.
Yeah.
Can you quickly explain what that looks like?
Yeah, so across the different programmes, government introduced in 2017 that previously anyone that's done an apprenticeship on a framework, you would have probably had, I think it was 2 online exams and a number of assessments in the workplace. And then it was changed in 2017 that if I stick with HGV as an example, now an apprentice will do 2 exams. They're called an engineering and a wider exam. So one's quite technical, one's quite health and safety related. Then they'll do 5 sort of assessments that are observed to make sure that they have learnt the skills over the 3-year programme. And they also do a professional discussion. So an independent examiner then asks them the questions for the professional discussion. And the independent person does the 5 assessments as well. So you're not going to get through one of those unless you've mastered that training and you understand that training. So it's done on a sort of sample basis, but you've literally got to know everything you've learnt for the 3 years in order to be able to get through. So there's quite a level of rigour to that training to be able to get through. And because of the independence of it, our job is to make sure that we've worked with the employer and we've delivered everything we need to get the person through their apprenticeship, because that's what success looks like for a young person. But you mentioned earlier, Sally, about people not necessarily staying with an employer long term. The fantastic thing about someone that goes on an apprenticeship, particularly if it's, say, 3 years, they rarely leave. So they will stay for at least that 3 years, and you might go, well, yeah, well, I don't want to train them all the way up and then they go. Nobody does, and if you look after them, they don't. But the good thing is you don't have people, young people nowadays are quite happy to move around, but on a 3-year apprenticeship, if they're looked after, they don't move around. So you get that retention in the workplace, and you get somebody that is going to be a good part of your team for a period of time. So yeah, when you're looking at labour workforce planning, apprenticeships have some great benefits.
I think, sorry.
It's a question we get asked a lot. How do we stop them moving after their apprenticeship programme? And Sue says, it's very simple. Look after them. Yeah. Make sure that you don't, just always treat them. And I go back to when I was an apprentice. You done your apprenticeship programme. You were kind of always seen as the apprentice for a number of years after that. Whereas actually, wait a minute, I've spent 3 years training. I've become a fully qualified technician. I should be treated like one. Yeah. And a lot of people then move. So if you don't, so you have to, as an employer, and this is from a personal experience, you have to treat people you know, differently from when they come through their apprenticeship. Yes, they're apprentices, they are there to learn, but when they're qualified, you should treat them so. So it's look after your apprentices as you would look after your technicians. They're valuable. Why invest 3 years of your time, money, to not treat them right, for them to move, to feel as if they have to move,
I
to say, well, I have to move.
Completely agree with that. But I think that there's always going to be someone who wants to change company, and it might actually just because they want to move location.
Yeah.
And I think we also just have to acknowledge the fact that every person that we train is one more technician for the sector. And actually, if every business was doing their bit, then it wouldn't matter, because you'd be still, there'd be enough to go around. It's about the good of the sector as well. You know, yes, of course, you want to train this person up and keep them yourselves, but we just have to acknowledge that we do need to train people for everybody.
The thing is, if we do have enough in the sector and enough technicians, you ain't going to need to worry about paying the extra value on salaries to get them, because there'll be enough around for everyone. It's when there's a shortage of anything, as we can see in day and age,
salaries have gone up.
The salaries have gone up, the cost of food goes up,
Yep.
and it's all to do with supply and demand. Yeah. So if we have enough technicians in the sector in the next 5 years, then we shouldn't be paying a massively top premium, and we can only do that if the full sector buys into the whole apprenticeship training programmes.
There's another example, Sally, as well, that when you look at how does training help businesses, and we were talking to a client recently that had the main bulk of the people there in their workforce was light vehicle technicians, but to work on something bigger than that, they can't sign their own work off, so their productivity is affected because they have to get somebody else to sign all their work off. So we've put together a suite of courses that we don't just say, well, do that one or that one. We listen. That's our job first and foremost, is to say, tell me what your skills needs are. Let's just do some TNA with your people so we understand the training needs analysis. Then we might say, well, actually, people need those 3 there. 2 of those accredited, 1 of them's not. Then you'll be able to make sure that people can sign off their own work, which improves your productivity efficiency, which then improves your business efficiency financially, and then hopefully people can understand, supplement that then with some technicians that do the things you need them to. And that was why at the start of this conversation I was saying, I think initially it's a combination of apprenticeships plus adult training. And you mentioned, Andy, when you finish your apprenticeship, training shouldn't stop there. No. So you look now at the amount of people that don't necessarily do things like ADAS training. Loads of people do ERTEC. ERTEC's a really popular course that we see. Light to heavy upskill is popular. ADAS, we do that, but it's not as popular. And you think, oh God, because it's not necessarily mandatory in some insurance things now. People don't, but we know how dangerous it is.
Still vital training.
Yeah, if the ADAS training is not done properly. Keep putting a career plan in for people helps retain them in the business, and then you don't see them moving on and you think, oh God, I've spent a lot of time with that person. But people are usually only going because they think they can get something better somewhere else, but if they can get that where they are.
And I'm guessing even some of the apprentices, especially as they're sort of perhaps going into their year 3, may even be bringing back information to the workshop that, you know, things have been forgotten, techniques and
it is, Sally, and a lot of this stuff, and a lot of our clients that we work with, we do what we do we call an apprenticeship plus programme. So they do their funded apprenticeship programme, but then we bolt on, like Sue was saying, the ADAS training. If it's not part of the programme, the EV, you know, up to level 3, you've got your ERTEC training. So there's different courses that we actually build. Another one that's very popular, believe it or not, is mental health. You know, you have, you know, candidates coming through who are 16, you know, through to, obviously, Sue says, usually up to about 25. Mental health in this day and age is something that's really important. So we do bolt-on courses like that as well. So there's a whole host of different courses that can be added to the apprenticeship course for employers that think, actually, the apprenticeship's great, but when someone's coming out the other end, what else can we do? What can we add into the programme, into their learning plan for that business to make sure that they're a much more rounded person at the end of their training plan, but they've got that future, plan to say, in 3 years' time I'll have done, my apprenticeship programme. In the 4th year I've done X, Y and Z. So there are other routes and other options that a lot of our clients already take the benefit of. So,
And Sally, something, because we've had numerous conversations over the years of how do we try and help the sector get the right qualified people that they need to run their businesses, and the work that we've done with the Department of Transport, where we're here examples of people that didn't invest in training for whatever reason, particularly when it wasn't easy to get people from other countries to come into the country. That created a bit of a challenge at that point, because lots of sectors were used to being able to bring people in from other countries, and then that supply stopped and it was like, oh, okay, what are we going to do? And we've seen some people take some real risks on doing short courses that were not enough to make someone qualified, and then do something like brakes. And I think the example that we were given at the time was a minibus with children on it, and then the brakes failed and you're like, ugh. So we know in the haulage sector, whether it's trucks, vans, coaches, we know that if they're not fixed correctly with the appropriate trained person, that can have some serious consequences to it. So when I'm talking about a balance of some of the short or bespoke courses versus apprenticeships, we do have to make sure that whatever training is done, and we will always guide people that if we don't feel that doing this particular one is enough for them to sign off somebody's work, we will make that super clear, because our job is to make sure. I think COVID was a bit of an eye-opener, that if the trucks are not on the road, our whole supply chain, all the food in the supermarkets, etc., stops. So keeping that supply chain and the trucks literally moving is something that we're really passionate about, because if there's not enough people delivering this type of training, then you end up seeing people cut corners where they may not have wanted to, but they feel they had no choice.
Yeah, and I think that the key part of that is keeping trucks safely on the road.
Yeah.
It's not just making sure a truck is on the road, whatever, because there's always going to be, if you've got a particular contract that obviously you need to keep to, the temptation will be to say, oh, it will be fine. And it will be that one time. And it's not, and nobody wants to see that. And I think that's been a big concern, certainly talking to the traffic commissioners about this. I think we've been told about the same scenario. I think somebody was put on a 3-day course, and they thought that was going to be enough to be able to service their vehicles. And it's making sure it's quality training. People are trained to the level of the expectation that the company has of them. It's really crucial, and this is a little bit of the fear at the moment with this shortage, the fact that there is the potential to have vehicles out on the road that really shouldn't be, and that's why we do need to be making that investment now. 3 years sounds like a really long time. So, it's going to take forever to train up. As you've already covered, they're going to be productive from 6 months in. They're going to be able to help. They're going to free up the more qualified technicians in the workshop, all of those things. And if we don't do it now, what kind of a state are we going to be in 3 years' time? And I don't want to read about vehicles being faulty on the road and accidents caused because of a shortage of technicians, because we need the goods still being delivered.
Yeah. Just that point, Sally, you said there about apprentices being productive. As an employer, you will get out of that apprentice what you put in. So if you put a bit of effort in at the start, at the front end of the apprenticeship programme, yep, they're new, whatever we call, you want to say, they're wet behind the ears, spend the time, nurture them through you know what you were like when you were 16, you know, starting your first job, or I was an apprentice tech. It's a bit daunting, but after a few weeks, you soon get into that. But invest the time at the start, and then your productivity from that person will come a lot quicker, but continue that training. And the quicker they get round the curve, the better the incentive is for them, the better the incentive is for the employer as well. And you know, to start to see and, you know, get that kind of a revenue out the other side, because just that little bit of investment at the front.
And you really get something out of nurturing people though anyway, you know, seeing them from completely green when they arrive and sort of, to producing this trained technician. I mean, surely that's enough to make a company proud anyway.
Definitely should.
And then something that we've done, Sally, for your members / customers is on our website. We put an RHA landing page on for your members so they can see what we can offer. We've also, there's a application form on there that if they fill that in, there's a dedicated person in our team called Scott. Scott will then liaise with the person in the business, and if people need some support because they go, I'm not fully sure what training needs analysis I might want, we will help with that, whether that be adult tech or the apprenticeship side. So there is somebody that we've put on hand for to support your members, to make sure that they're getting the best advice and understand what the offer is and how that partnership can work. So hopefully that shows you how important we've taken the partnership to work with you guys, to give you access to a landing page and everything, to make sure it's as simple as possible for people to get the right information.
I'm going to do another little bit of myth busting here as well, because a question that I get from members is, we've got a lad in the workshop, he cleans, or a lass as well, sorry.
A person, that's Sally, not me.
A person in the workshop is cleaning the vehicles. They really want to train, but they already work for me. Does that mean that I can't put them on an apprenticeship? And I know it sounds mad to us that someone would think that, but
it's a really interesting point actually, because when we talk about myth busting of how do we make it simple for employers, the complexity for training providers in this sector, there is quite a lot of rules, regulations that we have to comply with. So one of those is, how do we make sure that we don't train someone that's already got the knowledge or skills? So we have a process as a business where somebody will fill in a skill scan. So somebody in that example that's washed vehicles, in the skill scan, it'll ask a series of questions, and then they score themselves from 1 to 10, I think it is. With us, other providers might be slightly different, but it's like 1 to 10. And if you score like noughts all the way through it because you haven't got that knowledge, there's nothing stopping you going on to an apprenticeship program, and you can go on from sort of 16 to
whatever,
a very ripe old age.
Even our age.
So there's no restriction. I think we've heard of apprentices going on at like much older. I'm trying not to be like ageist, but pretty much until you're not on the planet anymore, you can do an apprenticeship. So what our team will do is, if somebody's worked in that workplace for like 5 years and it comes back and they've scored all noughts, they will go, let me go and ask the question, why did they score noughts? Oh, they were washing vehicles. Excellent. Right, then we can get them on a program. So we just have to make sure that we don't duplicate training and knowledge that the individual candidate has already got. As long as we don't, it doesn't matter if they've worked in the workplace 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. If they don't have the knowledge to do that job, and by taking this training they can be more productive for the country, then that's what an apprenticeship is all about. So yeah, we do have the systems in place to make sure, if you take something like, people will often call it an accidental manager. So you could have been placed as a manager for like 10 years. You could have very poor management ability. That's probably the politest way I can put it. But just because you've had a job for a period of time doesn't mean to say you understand all of these theories and these models and the methodologies to be a better manager. So all the statistics will say that there's loads of accidental managers that don't then give the best for their businesses because they haven't had the right training and knowledge. So even again in management roles, we'll go, right, if you've been in job role for X period of time, we'll then test your skills review and check that we're not going to deliver skills and knowledge you've already got. And if you haven't, then great, you can come on a program because you're going to benefit from it. That's done for two reasons really. One, because government don't want to fund training that has already been delivered. But two, from our point of view, we don't want somebody to come on program that may feel they're not going to get anything out of the program. So that's why that part of the process is really important. You might have customer service as an example, and you say, well, somebody's worked in that job role for 5 years. And you go, but can they do any of these things? No. They've literally been doing photocopying every day, and their job role just has to have customer service in it. And that initially could be a barrier, but our processes are robust enough that if the individual says, look, I would really benefit from that, and then we do the skills review, and as long as we don't breach what government are asking, which is don't duplicate the skills or knowledge, then they can come on a program. So it's a really good question. It's something we were only talking about this week. How do we make sure we don't make it too difficult for people just because it looks like they've worked somewhere for a period of time doesn't mean to say that they can't do an apprenticeship, because they could get tons of benefit out of doing certain apprenticeships. And there may be, as an example, someone might have worked in light vehicle and they might have done a qualification. And then what we usually do with that, if that's certificated, is we'd take off an amount of the program and say, you don't need that part, but we can deliver all the rest for you. So there's some really robust processes to make sure that if it's the right thing to do for the right reasons, that we can still do it. Obviously, there's the new rule now where apprenticeships used to be before, where they had to be a minimum of the year, whereas now that can drop down to 8 months. You still got to deliver a certain amount of guided learning hours, so it's not a way of dropping right to the bottom of quality, and we wouldn't do anything like that anyway. Everything we do, we want to do to the best of our ability. But if there are programs where, I don't know, make one up. Say you said, well, actually, we would like to build something. If government opened up the growth and skills levy for some short courses, you might say, well, could we do light to heavy conversion, this, and this? It would have to have a certain amount of guided learning hours, etc. So it's not just a case of like trying to do things as fast as possible, put people at risk or anything like that. There's enough protection in the system to make sure that doesn't happen, but also just because someone's been in a job role doesn't stop them coming on programme.
So thanks for that, Sue. So a little bit of some of the stuff Sue touched on there, Sally, was really important, obviously, about customer service management. But I think we've seen just of Panorama, I believe, a few weeks ago is round about the digital security and that whole data analyst. Is that something, that, again, that within your network where you're seeing that there's a requirement, and the whole, we've seen with some of the supermarkets and that have been affected by cyber attacks. So again, it's something that we are seeing across the world, I suppose, not just the UK. Is it something you think there's a need for?
There's a massive need, because I think what it's highlighted, it doesn't seem to matter how big a business you are, you're still open to cyber fraud, and it's a really scary scenario, as we saw from Panorama and Knights of Old. It's I think there's a lesson to learn that I think everybody within a business needs to be taught these skills, because anybody can receive an email that could potentially bring a business to a halt. We saw it at Co-op, we saw it at M&S. So I think it's crucial for us all to learn those skills, because it can have a whole fundamental impact.
I think the other thing, Andy, as well, that when people are making decisions on training, they don't necessarily think, so if somebody's working on a help desk inside the business, supporting the infrastructure on tech, does that align with an apprentice? Yeah, it does. Data analyst, we talk to lots of our clients around data analyst and go, I almost struggle to understand how, if you don't have good people that can analyse data in your business, you lose a lot of efficiencies and ways of being productive. And just to change sector slightly, we work with the food manufacturing sector as well. Lots of their business is around how do you make sure that you're lean and productive and efficient. So we see more and more people taking up data analyst apprenticeships with us to make sure that they do have that ability to crunch data to make their business as efficient as possible.
I think the thing within our sector is we are actually a data-rich sector. You think of all the telematics information that we get and all the tracking information. And so some companies are really good at it, others do nothing with it. And I think you just said it's that knowledge.
Yeah.
If you can actually make use of that data and make transport planning more efficient off the back of it, I think there are a lot of productivity wins out of AI and all these new digital skills.
And a great thing about, we were talking earlier about the difference, the degrees have their place for certain areas and apprenticeships have them for others. And if you take something like a data analyst that can work with somebody in a business, learn all of the things that are going in, but also bring in all of the knowledge and skills they're getting from a program. You mentioned earlier about people could probably bring some skills back from the workshop. It's quite similar in data analyst. And then we've seen some businesses as well invest in like social media type apprentices. So how does somebody with all of those skills that they're learning then help the business raise their profile to drive more revenue or a better customer perception? All of that's super important as well.
You hit the nail on the head earlier on when you were talking about your futures and the fact that effectively the customer, the young people are on TikTok. Well, actually investing in social media, our customers are on social media now. We're always on our phones. I'm terrible for it. So we are missing a trick by not utilising that more. And I think as a sector, we're probably a little bit behind on that.
Yeah, so I think as the levy was introduced and apprenticeships changed from frameworks to standards, and there's more and more apprenticeships, we've seen some great ones that we've tried to supplement the sectors we're in. So if you take automotive, to add like leadership, digital, social type stuff, because that adds to those existing customers that you work with. And then picking up on the point earlier, you can then take an apprentice that may have been, I sat with one lad and I said, what do you want to do next? And he'd got a distinction in his HGV apprenticeship and he said, I want to be a team leader. And I was like, perfect, we can do one of those. So that stepping stone of keeping them engaged with the business, that they won't lose the person out of that business if they keep that training going. So I think, yeah, that wider, to answer your question, Andy, the wider support that businesses need. It's not just about the technicians on the road. There's a whole raft of training from the apprenticeship stuff that I've just mentioned, the adult tech stuff, and then we've got lots of clients now that literally come in and will say, can I have that, that and that, and can you bespoke that, and can you put that together, and can you get that for me? We go, yeah, we can do that. So as this training is growing in the automotive sector and the demand is growing like monthly at the moment, we're able then to turn our hand to really different things. I was on about earlier where we're in conversations with someone in the south, and I'm trying not to say exactly where, but within that we're even doing training now like dockside on electrics on the cranes. That's a fair bit different than what we were used to doing previously, but because there's a demand and our people have got the right skill set, then why wouldn't we support that? So
and we desperately need provision in the south.
Yeah, you tell me a lot, Sally,
Yes.
and I am trying for you. So
Yeah,
thank you.
The training deserts.
Thank you for supporting us with the podcast today. I think it's really interesting to hear from what the RHA members, what their sort of pain points are and challenges. So thank you for that insight, and I'm sure your members will learn some of your information and then some of the, hopefully, the intel we've managed to put on top of that.
I think we've myth-busted quite a bit today and should hopefully make it an easier path to an apprenticeship for them through Remit. So obviously this is a great partnership for the RHA members in Remit. But how do our RHA members get in touch? Is there a landing page on Remit?
Yep, so what we've got to do, any member or customer or anybody, if you're going through the RHA skills website, there is an application form that will take you through to a landing page on Remit, or say if you just want to go direct to the Remit website, that will take you direct. You can fill in application forms, it will let you see the courses, the apprenticeship courses there, the short courses, the costs, etc. They're all on the website. You will have then, if you fill in an application form, someone will contact you from either the sales team or the dedicated, as Sue said earlier, Scott will contact the RHA members. So there's loads of way to be in contact, but please reach out to us.
And when we say an application form, it's simple. Name, contact details, what you're inquiring about, and then somebody reaches out. Yeah, so yeah, it's very, very simple to reach out, and then one of the team will just give you a call. And it would be handy if you say when you're available, because since we've launched, we've had lots of incoming and people are busy. So we don't always know, should we phone at 5 o'clock, should we phone at 9 o'clock? So it'd be great if you just give us a bit of a steer, because we're really keen to make sure that we get back to your members really timely, but we also don't want to be disrupting them as well. So yeah, on the small application form, if you can just give us a steer on that, that would be fantastic.
I think as a message to our RHA members, we've got over 500 candidates here. We do not want to lose any of them to any other sector, but I also don't want to lose them to light vehicle either. So
No,
I would say members,
I
make
think
sure you
the
phone.
important part, Sally, on that, and this was why we wanted to launch the partnership arrangement now, when there's so many young people that have applied to work in the HGV sector. Now, yes, they get their news and their fitness and everything off of the likes of TikTok, and now they're going to be able to get Remit careers advice or road haulage. We'll be able to get you guys some people that have worked in membership of the road haulage to add to that on your future. But there's a limited window that the parents will let them wait to see if a vacancy comes up. So the quicker we can move with this, knowing we've got young people that are waiting, the better it is for those, because their parents will say to them, look, I know you're passionate about that, but now you're going to have to go and do another industry that they don't particularly want to work in, which will be a real shame when your industry short, got a skills shortage, and then we see people that were interested that weren't given that opportunity. So time is of the essence now. We will make this process as simple as possible for anyone that says, please tell me what I would need to do. You've only got to call in. Scott will walk you through all of that. But if we can get as many people placed, that will stop people having to go to other industries, and then you having to listen on repeat that there's a skills shortage in your industry.
Well, it'd be nice to solve one.
Yeah, it would indeed.
Yeah, I'm sure we can. But no, listen, thanks again, Sally. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.